I'm really looking forward to the presentation today. And as I mentioned to people a while ago, I love the title, What Do We Know? What Can We Do? And What Can We Stop Doing? Thank you, Peter.
Good morning, friends, and thank you for the opportunity of sharing ideas with you at the 2022 PRECI conference. I want to reflect on our field and think about what we know, what we should do, and what we should stop doing in our work with children with or at risk of developmental impairments and their families. And people often talk about thinking outside the box. I would like us to get rid of the box because I think we have often, in fact, always been constrained. And I'm going to try out some ideas which I hope will provoke you to think about things, perhaps and hopefully to challenge me and each other. I understand that the focus of your organization is on early childhood intervention, which offers specialized support and services for infants and young children with disabilities, or children at risk of developmental delay and their families. And this is according to the national guidelines, which Denise shared with me. Your conference, as I understand it, aims to connect early child intervention professionals and researchers to support knowledge sharing, sharing being very important, collaborative research, and peer support. And that is all in relation to the provision of high quality, evidence-informed, and you'll hear more about this phrase, early childhood intervention services. Here are the takeaway messages, and if I present them now, maybe we can stop and just have a conversation. First of all, child development and child development impairments are a family issue, and I'm going to emphasize this very, very strongly. I believe that family must be the central focus of all our services, and that includes thinking and doing in family-centered service ways. I think we need to recognize that the goals we should be trying to address are not just the goals that we have based upon what we know. We need to ask what evidence exists for anything that we do and how strong that evidence is. We also need to recognize that new evidence is constantly appearing, some of it more stronger than others. And I'm arrogantly going to suggest that some evidence we have from a study of, that we've been doing with colleagues in Australia puts the spotlight on parents and is, I think, quite powerful. And I'll share this at the end. So the broad question is, what do we need to do next? What do we need to stop doing? Just because it's a good idea doesn't mean it works. So the questions I'm asking are, can we apply evidence-based practices such as family-centered service, collaborative teamwork, and so on? I want to talk a little bit about why I believe that discipline or diagnosis-specific practices are not the right paradigm. I don't think we need a cerebral palsy clinic and an autism clinic for most of what we do. And I ask whether we can blend and combine and consolidate the practices that we all do, collaboratively, hopefully, with a focus on achieving child and family goals, usually referred to and usually related to parents' concerns about functioning. That's why kids come to us. There's something of what they're doing or how they're doing it that is a concern. Focus on development, a focus on participation or engagement in life. Can we do this? And I will ask a few rude questions about whether our perennial focus on the amount of therapy is a good way to go. But let's pause briefly and ask, where have we come from and where are we now? And I always like to reflect on the fact that if this is a new idea, in what way is it new? And in relation to what is it new? So the question I'm asking is, what's changing in the world around us? Our clinical training for virtually all of us, whatever our discipline, has been an emphasis on the need for a medical understanding of problems. The idea that treatment based upon the diagnosis should aim to fix the medical problem, a very good idea when it works. That normal function in our field of child development, normal function is the treatment goal. So if children aren't doing things nicely and easily, we're aiming to remediate toward normality. And we have been trained as experts. Service providers are experts. And all of that, I think, is true to some extent. Experts make diagnoses, experts offer advice and intervention, and experts aim to fix. This, however, is limited. The problem is that this is how everybody in the community sees us. That includes the parents who come to us. That includes the people referring children to us, who are sending them to us for the diagnosis and the treatment with the explicit or often implicit expectation that this will fix things. And this sets everybody up for disappointment. We also know that people in the community at large have a lot of pessimism about childhood disability and will say things to us like, you must be very dedicated, meaning, I know you're a nice person, but why are you bothering? People say, what can you do for them? Thinking about kids with impairments. And I have answers, we have answers in our field that will allow us to give a very long and detailed account of what can we do for them, which I'm going to share with you, and much of which you may already know, and you can decide whether you agree with what I'm saying. So the first thing to say is that there are new ideas about health. I like this concept from an adult thinker. Health is the ability to adapt and self-manage in the face of social, physical, and emotional challenges. So here the emphasis is on ability, on adaptation, on self-management, with a biopsychosocial context, involvement and concern with the biological dimensions of a problem, the psychological and personal dimensions of an issue, and the social context in which this person is growing up. So an individual's functioning is a key component in health and requires direct consideration. So functioning, however it is done, regardless of ability or disability, can be understood as evidence of health. The definition of function, just because I do it differently doesn't mean I can't do it. I can do it. I found this definition quite powerful and meaningful. Health is dynamic, and the ability to adapt and self-manage. Do not define your child by their diagnosis. They have so much more to give than the label that was given to them. Said by a parent, not to me, but a quote that we like from the literature. We also are recognizing that developmental conditions are not diseases. There may be a disease process underneath the surface, but we're focusing on whole children, on development, on being, becoming, belonging, and not just on the medical component of things. And much of the language we use is really an alphabet soup of so-called diagnoses. CP, due to what? ASD, associated with what? Developmental coordination disorder, intellectual disability, and so on. These are really descriptive labels about functional challenges. They're not diseases in themselves. And the medical management should be complemented considerably by other foci that I'm going to talk about. For a long time, people have recognized the notion that across different developmental impairments, there's an awful lot that's in common. And people talk about this as the non-categorical or the non-diagnostic way of thinking and talking. We also are recognizing that the children we work with cerebral palsy, autism, intellectual disability, Down syndrome, and so on, grow up and become adults with those conditions. And so we need to take a life course approach to these child onset conditions, which traditionally have been seen only in the field of child health. We need to accept and celebrate diversity and variation, and happily that's happening at a social and political level in other areas as well. And ultimately, we need to talk about development. Development, not disability. I should have heard that a million times over by now. You were the first to say that to me. It is life-changing to me personally. Fundamentally important. So the impact of these changes, and I like to show this picture because it can elicit a lot of discussion. The optimists in the audience are seeing a happy, smiley child who's about to go to his first day of kindergarten, who has what appears to be appropriate equipment to empower him. The pessimists are saying, oh my goodness, he needs more therapy, he needs better seating, shouldn't he have surgery to correct his contractures, and so on. And clearly, how we see things determines considerably what we want to do. We are emphasizing a focus on can versus cannot. This boy has power mobility. This boy has obviously the ability to go to school. And even though he has cerebral palsy, we need to focus on development, child and family strengths, achievement, being family-centered, thinking in a life course perspective. Because 1,000 years of the best therapy that Australians and Canadians could provide will not cure or fix his cerebral palsy. He's never going to do things in typical ways, so normality is a dumb idea. And disability, in World Health Organization terms, is a social construct. If he gets to school and can't get into the school because there are stairs at the front of the building, he is disabled by his environment. He's there, ready to go, and he can't do it because of factors outside of himself. The World Health Organization dipped its toe into the waters of impairment and disability in 1980 and created a framework, which you see in red, whereby any disease condition might affect body structure and function, which they called impairment, which in turn limited functioning, which they called disability, which in turn had social implications called handicap. These ideas didn't catch on very well, but in 2001, 21 years later, the International Classification of Functioning, Disability, and Health, the ICF, expanded these ideas considerably. And this is what we now have, a framework that connects all the pieces. First of all, any health condition, in this case for children, cerebral palsy and autism. Any health condition will have some kind of impairment in body structure and function, which may interfere with activity and doing things, which may interfere with participation or engagement in life in ways that are meaningful to us, in the context of personal factors that make you with your condition different from me with the same condition, and environmental factors of which there are clearly thousands. And we like this framework because it's a universal framework for health for everyone. The words are neutral, like activity and participation, instead of disability and handicap. It's a dynamic, interconnected system. So where we start our interventions need not be just with body structure and function. And we can look at how a change in one component leads to changes in other components. It's a focus on strengths. It's a focus on what people can do. And it allows us to gain a more complete picture of the child and their family, to identify issues to focus on, which we like to suggest be written in red, strengths of the child and family written in green, and questions written in purple that still need to be answered. So this is a rule in, build a picture kind of framework and supports a family-centered, strengths-based approach. Our research group at CanChild created the F words for child development. And what we did was simply try to be cute and think of an F word that would illustrate or illuminate what we mean by body structure and function. So we talk about fitness, including physical and mental well-being. Activity, we talk about functioning, doing things, however you do them. Participation, friendships, peers for children, but also other kinds of friendships. Personal factors, what's fun for you and how can we build on what's fun for you and build our therapies around that. And with respect to environment, the central environment for children is family. And we added future because for children, future is really what childhood is all about. And there is a massive amount of information on our website, which you can access for free. And this is an integrated poster, which brings together in the smaller boxes, the ICF words, and in the larger boxes with animations and words and pictures, the ideas that we have for the so-called F words for child development. And these ideas are being used all over the world in multiple languages. And again, emphasizing future. And I think it's fair to say that people have not seen things this way before. So we take credit for the F words, but all we've done is to try to bring the ICF World Health Organization framework to life. So again, the takeaway messages: think about child development and issues in child development as family issues. Recognize that the goals we should be trying to address should be shared goals between us and families. We need to think about the evidence that exists to support what we're offering. We need to recognize that there is always new evidence coming forward and new ways of looking at things, as I'll show you. And this raises the question, what do we need to do next? And what do we need to stop doing or stop doing so much of? So the common issues: the importance of family. I've said it several times already. And in blue, the phrase, "you have textbooks, we have storybooks," is a sensational 7-word sentence said to me by a parent in our Canada-Australia study a couple of years ago. And this became the title of an editorial I wrote and a podcast that I did with Elizabeth, this parent. I think this is really profoundly important and recognizes the complementarity between what we bring as professionals with our textbook knowledge and our experience, and the individual stories of individual families. Parents come to us. I've been working in this field for over 50 years and have never had a child come in on their own and ask for help because their behavior sucks, or they don't talk good, or their walking is clumsy. So it is parents who come to us and want help and advice and understanding and explanation. The children's issues are the parents' predicament. It is the parents who have responsibility for the child's development, and we need to respect that and treat them as partners in the work we're doing. That means we need to be family-centered, and this is an idea that could consume an hour of discussion just by itself. There are lots of myths and misunderstandings about family-centered service. It takes more time, yada, yada, yada. And I think that if it's done well, it actually takes less time because we build a relationship with families that's built on trust and respect. It also helps parents to regain a sense of control, because when they have a child with an impairment, their life is spinning out of control. Family, of course, is infinitely varied. And when I say there are always more than two parents, what I mean is there is an extended family. There are friends and relations and other people that are important to the parents and important to the child. And we can expand our focus and our intervention to include more than the parent or parents. And if you go to our website, you'll find a lot of family-centered service resources that are all free. When we talk about being evidence-based, we need to recognize that what this phrase means is that we are trying to apply the best available research-based findings, individualized to that particular situation in the context of the values and beliefs and capacities of that family. So I've seen children with attention deficit disorder who I think would benefit from the use of medication. The family says, we don't believe in medication and we will not use it. Well, that's their belief, and that has to be respected. So even when we have an evidence-based intervention that we think would be appropriate, we can't do it unless the family buys into it. On the other hand, if the family has values that we don't agree with, we have to have a conversation about that as well. And I put this here. I think the people listening to this talk will know this, but this is very important when we're talking with parents. Just because it's on Dr. Google doesn't mean that it's true. Google is full of anecdotes and testimonials and advertisements, and families need to know that They need to be thoughtful and analytically critical, and we can help them with that if it's on Google. It doesn't mean it's evidence. Outcomes. Everybody talks about outcomes. Whose outcomes are we interested in, and why does this matter? If I'm doing an intervention, I want to know whether the impact of the intervention is what I hoped it would be. So I need to know that. But the family's outcome may be quite different from what I'm expecting. We need to know what question we're trying to answer. And I use the phrase WTQ, what's the question? So a parent came to me some years ago very upset because I hadn't talked about the use of botulinum toxin for her daughter's cerebral palsy. And I said, what are you asking for? She said, everybody uses Botox. I said, well, not everybody uses Botox. And in any case, Botox is used for particular issues, and that's not relevant to your daughter. I never even thought to tell you why I wasn't talking about Botox. So what's the question? What tools should we use to measure the outcomes? And that's, again, a focus of considerable discussion, which we don't have time for today. And how do we use the findings? Therapy. This is what all of us think we need to do. So what therapy? For what problem? Does the therapy work? And what do we mean by work? We can make changes. For example, with botulinum toxin, we can change the range of motion of major lower limb joints, or we can change the amount of spasticity. So in that case, the botulinum toxin works. But does it change functioning? The answer is usually no. So is it going to work for this issue? It depends what the issue is. If the issue is spasms in the muscles, then botulinum toxin may be very appropriate. If the issue is to improve functioning, then we may want to do other things, because this intervention will not work for that issue. So we need to be clear what questions or challenges we're trying to address. What therapy should we use? Depends on the question, depends on the issue, depends on the problem, and so on. And we need to evaluate the impact in this particular situation. There's a lot of belief that more is better, and that is not necessarily true. So again, what is the question? What is the challenge? What are the costs? There's a cost in time. There's a cost in money. There's a cost in opportunities lost. When I'm having therapy, I'm not out playing with my friends. And when I'm doing therapy with my child, I'm not taking them to the zoo. So we need to reflect on these things and find a balance that is appropriate for that child, that family, and the resources we have. And how we decide involves the parents, who is we. I hope that you have been making notes about your concerns and putting them in the chat. If you haven't, this is the time to do that, so that we can have a discussion about these ideas. And as I threatened and promised, here is some bonus evidence hot off the press. This paper has just been accepted in Disability and Rehabilitation, a major journal in our field, about our Envisage Family Study, a project that I've been doing with Christine Imms and Laura Miller and others in Australia for several years now. And this is what one parent called early intervention for parents. We've introduced a number of themes along the lines of what I've talked about in this talk to parents of children under the age of 6 with neurodisabilities. And these parents, 65 of them, half in Canada and half in Australia, had kids with a wide array of conditions. This was not about any specific diagnosis. The quantitative and qualitative evidence is quite powerful. Big changes in parent-reported empowerment and parent confidence up to 3 months post-program. And we are now in the process of analyzing the 12-month data. And this early intervention for parents seems to be a very important complement to the traditional early intervention with the child. All the parents who participated in this program said, you've got to do this for service providers. And we have a major grant, and we are now in the middle of implementing Envisage for service providers. bringing these ideas, which I'll share briefly with you, to service providers, both for them to understand the ideas and for them to feel comfortable to implement them with families. The program is 5 weekly hour-long Zoom-based workshops. The first looks at new ideas about health, the ICF and the F words. The second looks at concepts in child and family development. The third session is called Parenting as a Dance, led by the children. The fourth focuses on looking after yourself because that's good for your kids. And the fifth is about communicating, collaborating, and connecting with others to share these ideas and build the program for your child and family around the things that are important to you. And we think that this is a really exciting expansion of our ideas about early intervention. So I'm concluding with the question, what are our challenges? What are our opportunities as service providers working in this field? I think we need to understand and embrace and teach and apply these ideas. And I say with everyone, because I think parents need to understand these ideas, and we have good evidence that they resonate positively with families. We have good evidence that young people really like these F words ideas and so on, and that this is more important to them than more therapy. We need to teach all our students in all our disciplines about these ideas and about how they fit with our focus on child and family well-being and development. I say the world out there because kids go to school and the school systems need to understand this, and we have some experience with this, and they appreciate the ideas as well. And the community who make the rules, the people who run the recreation programs, the people who make policy at government level. And we have some very exciting connection with the government of our province. I live in Ontario, Canada, with 14 million people, and our Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services has embraced these ideas and has given us a considerable amount of money to create a series of F words, resources and modules for parents and service providers, because they appreciate the value of these ideas. So we can change the world. We need to study what we're doing so that we find out what works and how to do it. But this is a very exciting time to be in our field. So I'm going to stop at this point. I believe we're going to have time for conversation and questions, and I welcome your challenges. I welcome the yes, but what about? And let's keep the discussion going. Thank you very much.